Hello, this is Will Harold, the Energy Hunter, with Akashic Intelligence, the original AI, coming to you from the Rogue River in Southern Oregon. Today, I want to talk a bit about a change of perspective. Many of you know that I moved to Rogue River from California and had visions of beginning to grow my own food based on the ideas of food shortages and scarcity and so on. And as I began to develop that concept and that idea, I also began to realize that there's other things that maybe I should consider also. And again, this video is for those who may be considering the same thing, that may be thinking about moving out onto the land. I chose not to go off grid just because it was something that I didn't feel I needed to do. But I do have two pieces of property. I have a 1 acre piece on the Rogue River, and then I have another 5 acre piece up on Eagle Point, which is much more remote, could be somewhat considered off grid. And that would really actually be my larger farm area. And I call that Eagle Medicine Ranch. And as I began to grow this year, I started sprouting my different vegetables that I wanted and plants that I wanted early in February in little sprouting containers. And my plan was that I was going to take those and plant those. And that was kind of how I was going to do my future cropping, so that I'd get a yield that I could eat in case of food scarcity. The more that I plant and the more that I do this, the more my perspective changes. Now, I'm an 8th generation farmer from the hills of Tennessee. My father moved out to California after the war, after the Korean War, and began to become a professional. Before that, all his fathers and grandfathers and great grandfathers had been farmers. So the way that I knew how to grow was to actually, put things in rows, add some water, and tend those crops. And everything that was being introduced basically from Europe, was being a European or an Aztec crop, or a Mayan crop, or Peruvian crop, such as tomatoes, potatoes, and the like. And when you begin to look at that, you begin to wonder, is that the way we should really grow? So sometimes we may want to consider, as we look at moving out into land and begin to become self-sustaining, not only where we're going to grow and how we're going to grow, but what we're going to grow. And for me, that changed a bit. So as most of you know, I kind of put together collages of things that I'd like to talk about. And today we're going to put together a collage of my journeys over the last month or so, actually over the last 4 months, 4 to 5 months, since about February, since I started actually doing my seedlings and getting to know those plants. There's been a couple of major breakthroughs for me. One was how much work it is to actually get, irrigation and beds and topsoil, even for a no-dig garden, how much work that is. And so as I was considering, doing all these things, if you look at this collage over here, I started off with nothing pretty much, but I ended up, planting this kind of wildcraft bed in which I planted a lot of the plants that I had talked about in a previous video called Is It Plant or Is It Food? And that was really about miner's lettuce and dead nettle and blue spruce, and some of the things that I was seeing popping up in my garden because I had not become familiar with my land. And so as I was looking at what to kill. I mean, my idea was come in, kill all the weeds, do the beds, plant like my forefathers in the rows with the European crops. And then, as time went on, people began to talk to me. And I'm not saying that they're really doing anything different. They're approaching it in some different ways by biodynamic farming or permaculture or sustainable. But again, it's really the crop selection and how you go about that. Now, each area, I'm sure, of the United States, has different abundance. And for me, Southern Oregon has quite a bit of abundance. I'm sure if I was in, Tucson, Arizona, I wouldn't have much abundance. But that's one reason I moved to Southern Oregon, because there is quite a bit of abundance here. And there's also a lot of water, more than I actually thought there was, and unseasonally more than what they're supposed to be this year. And I have some videos that I'll share with you that kind of cover those areas. As you can see, one of the pictures here with me, roughing the wild to save my crops. So over the last few months, as I've said, there's been some very big aha moments for me. And it's, has to do a lot with the time that we're working in right now, this new resonance that's coming in, some of the energies that I've worked with. Some of you may have seen some of my other videos, such as biogeometry and courting sacred energies to Eagle Medicine Ranch and the sites I work with. But this week I had the opportunity on the 27th to go to a little festival out in the desert called Music in the Sky. And I would highly recommend it to anybody who is considering that. It was a very spiritual experience, what I'd call a spiritual vortex, because I believe that once we enter into that type of resonance with others, we actually will step out in a new frame of mind and in a new reality. But one thing I did at Music and Sky is, if you can see up here in the corner here of my collage, is the hoppy plant, which is a native tobacco. And I really enjoyed it. I don't really smoke any marijuana. It's not my ideal condition. I'd rather be more focused and more aloof. But I did really enjoy the hoppy. Really opened up the heart chakra and actually went up into the third eye, and really felt like it was more of a calming influence and a focusing influence for spiritual growth. So that really began to make me think, well, my relative grew tobacco in Tennessee. It wasn't native, and um, maybe I can grow tobacco here on, Eagle Medicine Ranch. Maybe they can be a crop that I do, this hoppy. Well, I began to investigate that, and I actually found that the Native Americans in this area, that was the one crop they really grew. They were mostly hunter gatherers, but they made sure that they grew their tobacco. And so there are a couple of different wild tobaccos in Southern Oregon. And as I began to walk my land, I found two of them. So I actually have wild tobacco already on my land. And you might ask, well, why are you walking your land? Well, a couple of weeks ago, Alphabetic did a little series called Anastasia that's over here in this lower corner. And it's a pretty remarkable book. Don't agree with everything in it, but there are many things that are enlightening. The story is about a Russian gal who lives in the woods, and she was discovered by a Russian businessman during Perestroika. And she actually, was in communion with the land. She says that she gets up every morning and walks her land, and the land communicates with her. She has to walk barefoot, because when we walk barefoot, we exchange information with the earth. As some of you may know, I believe that the earth is a sentient being, has meridians, has ley lines, has energies, and we have the ability to communicate with it. And the easiest and best way we can do that is through our bare feet. We can ground with the earth. We can exchange information. In Anastasia, it actually states that as you walk the land will understand what you need and it will grow those plants. And I wonder if it knew that I was going to encounter tobacco and actually sprouted those plants for me this time. We'll see. but also it will remove obstacles such as brambles and other things from your feet. And it was a funny thing because this week at Music and Sky, I walked the entire venue out in the desert for a few days, and I didn't get one sticker. The only issues I had with was the rocks in the parking lot, and also the heat of the sand on the last day, because my feet weren't quite broken enough. But I'd been walking enough on my own land every day that I could actually endure that and walk on that land and begin to feel that resonance. And I think that walking the land does many things for us. As I said, it gives us a relationship with the earth, and but it also grounds us quite a bit. And there was one instance I had while I was at Music and Sky. It was at one of the very end of the day, right when we were leaving. Everybody was getting ready to leave. This was on Monday, and a friend of mine had been saying that he knew this woman who was very electromagnetic sensitive. That even when she got in cars, they'd shut, the electronics would shut off, or when she got around certain electronic devices, they'd shut off. And he'd asked me if I could help her. He says, you're the energy hunter. What are you going to do? And, it kind of calls you into action. What am I going to do? Well, I ran into her, like I said, the last day as she was putting down her tent. And she said, he had said that maybe I could help her. What would I suggest? And I said, well, at this point, I really don't know. I would try to stay away from as many electronic devices as possible. But let me think about it a bit, and I'll get back to you. She said, let me take down your phone number and your contact information. I said, great. So she pulled out her phone, and the minute she began to put my information in, she actually began to have an attack because her email and text and everything started downloading at that moment. And she said, it's happening. I can't believe it. It's happening. I'm feeling, nervous. I said, okay, first thing you want to do, take off your shoes right now. Just take off your shoes and get your feet on the ground. I said, the next thing, begin to breathe out very deep, like below your belly button deep. Begin to breathe all of that toxin out, because your breath can expel a lot of toxin that's in your body. And she was doing that, and it still wasn't helping. So then I just thought, you know what? I've been grounded all week up here. I'm sure I'm pretty grounded. I reached over and put my hand on her shoulder, and I could feel the electricity coming through my fingertips, through my body, and through my feet, and grounding into the earth. And she said she could feel the actual energy leaving her body, going through me. And within maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes, she had settled down, she was grounded, and she was no longer being affected by that radio, that electric magnetism that had been in her, really electricity that was in her, as we know from Russell. So if anyone's having those issues, you might want to try that just to get grounded. So I'm saying here is, please take your shoes off, walk on the earth. The one thing that I've seen that I just remember is that when I was a kid and I used to watch the news or National Geographic, everybody was running around either barefoot or with leather sandals on in the Middle East and Africa and the undeveloped parts of the world. And now when I watch those same video clips, they're all wearing Nikes, they're all wearing tennis shoes that are separating them from the mother, from the earth. And it's almost as if you become a free radical then, right? Because you have no connection to the body. We all know what free radicals do to a body. They cause disease. So again, I would say, take your shoes off, get your feet grounded, begin to work with the earth, because even Edgar Cayce said that this was a time in which we would begin to engage nature spirits and natural forces in order to overcome the current situation we're in. We're not going to be able to win this in the 3D with conventional means. we're going to need to actually tap into deeper and more in the esoteric part of ourselves, become grounded in the earth and in ourselves in order to actually overcome what's happening. Or else we have to put in a little bit of work, decide that we might want to garden, decide that we might want to grow our own food, decide that we might want to unplug a bit and get back to the things that um, can connect us. So, as I'm going through all this, I came across this book that is in the center here, which is called Tending the Wild. And so, everything I've talked about to date, is in this book, a lot of it. Um, and the basic and general information of the book is that when John Muir, who came to California and saw Yosemite Valley, as a lot of people are aware, and started some things like the Sierra Club, he looked out and saw this pristine valley and so beautiful. What the book's stating is that a lot of that was because the native peoples were tending the garden. They had spent many years in fish and forest and other aspects of creating and cultivating the earth and those ecosystems and managing them. And when the white man came in, or whatever, European, whatever we want to call it, Watikos came in, they began not to manage it anymore. They began to just destroy it. And after it got destroyed, the idea that it could just return, if left alone, to the condition that it was in may be a false flag, and that we actually may need to tend it more consciously than what is being actually proposed today. But as I said, I believe that we can begin to do that on our own land also, especially in the areas that have growth, that produce quite a bit of foliage. And I'm seeing that on my land, and it's really and I don't see them as weeds anymore. I actually see them, as gifts. And so the areas that I need to have clear, I do clean out, like areas I drive on and so on. But the areas that are open, I'm actually trying to allow those to wildcraft and see what comes up, and see if I can actually begin to grow the things I like that are wild, and begin to create a habitat that is much more natural and is tending the wild rather than creating a new superimposed planning system upon it. So after we get done here, I have a couple of videos. One short one of what my land looked like before I started. Like I said, you can see it. It was pretty bare here. I began to use the chipper to create mulching, which I put at the bottom of these hugel beds. And I filled these with topsoil and put in my irrigation and planted the crops and the plants that are typical, collard greens, lettuces, beans, tomatoes, peppers, basils, all kinds of things that are in the garden now. And they're all doing well, but it does take work. And that's in the last video that's in this series that you'll see of me fighting the elements. So with that being said, this is Will Harold, the Energy Hunter from Akashic Intelligence, the original AI. Stick around and watch the next two videos. They're short, but kind of fun. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Hello, this is Will Harold, the Energy Hunter with Akashic Intelligence, the original AI, coming to you from Southern Oregon next to the Rogue River. My previous video, I talked a little bit about eating some miner's lettuce and also dead nettle and also some spruce buds. And I'm getting my garden ready for my no-dig bed. As you can see, this is the area that I've chosen because it is the area that has the most sun and actually is probably the most accessible for gardening. The unfortunate thing is it is next to the highway here, which is rather noisy, so I apologize for that. But as you can see, this is quite a long distance here, probably about 150 feet of planting area.
And so I'm trying to figure out how do I want to plant this. And what I first did was I took all the plants that were edible or medicinal out of the area from about where you see the green patch back, so that I could actually like put my miner's lettuce. I put some dead nettle out here. I also put some peony, which has some medicinal benefits also that I found in this area. And so I've kind of wild crafted the front of this bed here just so that I could keep an area where I could actually get the the perennial effects of the miner's lettuce, and actually begin to collect the seeds so I can transfer those to my other property up in Eagle Point. So if you can look, as we move farther up, you can see that I have this railroad ties by the side here. So I'm actually going to use this for one side of my no plant bed. You can see here, I've been pulling the weeds rather than weed eating. I've been doing both, but I've been trying to pull the larger weeds. But I want to use this portion here, this kind of curb, actually to help build up my bed, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray this entire area with 45% vinegar, and then I'm going to lay some carpet over it, just because I have the carpet from a remodel I was doing. And I'm going to put plastic over that so the carpet doesn't get wet. And I'm going to let this whole area die down and die out for about a week and a half. And then I'm going to pull that up, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to actually put in fencing around. So I'm going to put fencing on the outside here of the railroad ties. I already have fencing on this side. This is really to keep the animals out. But I'm going to probably put a walkway right here along this fencing, and then put the fence on the outside here, and then put my bed in the middle. After I do the cardboard and the plastic and the vinegar spray, I'll pull all that off, and then I'll put down cardboard in this area, and I'll put my mulch on top of that I get from the plants and tree limbs that I'm going to mulch up. Put that on top of the cardboard, then put down some compost and other topsoil, and then I'll actually do my plants. And I'll probably put my higher plants, which are like my beans, my broccolis, my tomatoes, my Brussels sprouts, on this backside here next to the railroad ties, and put lettuces and onions and other shorter plants on this other side between where I have the walkway, the lettuces, and the higher plants here. So that's going to be the plan. And I'm about a week and a half out for the optimum time to plant per the Farmer's Almanac. So hopefully I can get this done in about a week and a half. So I'll be coming back to you guys in about a week and a half, and we'll see how the progress is done. And we'll see if anything in my sprouts have gotten any larger. Again, thanks. This is Will Harold, the Energy Hunter with Akashic Intelligence, the original AI. Please like and subscribe. Hello, this is Will Harold. I've finished my beds, but just to let you know the trials and tribulations of a wannabe farmer on a small scale. When I left, I left on the 26th to go to Music and Sky, and it was estimated that it was going to be 91 degrees and really hot, and I was afraid that all my seedlings that I was planting were going to get burned up. So I put together a shade structure, lightweight, that I thought would be good against the sun and maybe shade it so they wouldn't burn up. Well, since that time, today is June 4th, and it's rained ever since. And my structure wasn't made to hold rain. So I had to pull that down today and get ready and just let the, I put in all this irrigation too. I don't know if you can see all the irrigation that's there all the way down the bed. And probably didn't need to put that in. I rushed to get all that in before I left. But you know, they're doing good. Didn't lose any plants. They're all healthy. I probably got about another 100 in the back also. And was a fun deal. Got it in. Moved about 4 yards of topsoil and made the hugel beds, and looking forward to a good harvest this summer and fall. So for those who romance about farming or getting gardens in, don't forget the weather is unpredictable. There's always climate change. Thanks a lot. Talk to you later.